This is the session about FileMaker Go, and we are using the DevCon2Go app as the example. I'm glad to see you. My name is Claus Lavendt, or, well, in fact, I'm also known as Santa. Apparently, my first name is somewhat difficult for Americans, so when I say it's just like the Santa Claus, then people suddenly get it. So you can call me Santa as well. Don't expect me to bring you gifts, well, unless you have been good, of course. So I'm from Denmark, which is a country in Scandinavia, but I often hear that maybe you're from Germany or Sweden or Norway, and that's absolutely not true. So I brought a map just to show you where Denmark is. I know where the confusion might be, as in the past, both Norway, Sweden, and parts of Germany, well, even England was part of Denmark. So, but today we are only a very small country in Scandinavia. And now you know where it is. Okay. So the agenda for this session is that we are going to look into mobile apps with FileMaker Go. Then we are looking into the new features of the platform, of the FileMaker Go and the platform. And then we are looking into the DevCon2Go and review the code and functionality. So DevCon2Go is hopefully in your pocket already, and hopefully you have used it, and hopefully you have found it to be useful. I would say it's jam-packed with features, and some of those we are going to look into in this session. So, but I want to start all the way back and say when we are going to create mobile apps, it's very important that we don't just jump into FileMaker and start typing and developing stuff, even though it's very fun and joyful to just jump in. But it's more important that we make sure that we know what we are doing and why we are doing it. So first off, we need to define the purpose of this app. So why should we even do this, and what's the purpose in whole? Then we need to design a structure, both for the data and the UI UX. And then we need to build the structure first and build the interface afterwards. And you need to make sure that each step will comply with the purpose. That's why we start with the purpose of this app, so we don't get into different directions where maybe we create a cool feature, but it may not serve the purpose of the app. So this is how I look at development in general and in mobile apps in particular. So naturally we had to look at the purpose for the DevCon2Go app. And first off, we needed an app that could present a schedule for more than 100 sessions over 4 days. It should also introduce speakers to attendees and help you navigate the conference. We also wanted to put in a feature to allow you to track people that you meet, as networking is a very big part of a conference like this. And then we want to coordinate surveys and feedback, so it's easy for you to give feedback, and the feedback is very useful for the conference and the speakers. And of course, we needed to showcase the new technology. And finally, but not least, in my opinion, this should be a learning tool. So that's why it's completely open source. You can dig in and steal all the code, and I really encourage you to do that. And that's what we are looking into. So the architecture of the DevCon2Go app has some conventions that we developed with our colleagues in Sweden. It's a very simple convention that you can find links to and download and use yourself. but it makes a kind of structure where it's easier to know what's going on in your solution. It's using a variation of the selector connector model that you probably already know. If not, then Todd Geist has some very good blog post about that and video. And finally, less is more. I created this app last year where I re-engineered. There were an app earlier, but that was overly complicated. So that's why the less is more philosophy was something that I really wanted to try to put in. Even though there are a lot of complex features and advanced features, I've tried to make it as lightweight as possible. For the UI, UX, with this new release, we got the new card style window, which I've implemented everywhere. They seem to fit. The iOS animation transitions and simplicity by design. That was the idea. So, just want to, open the iPad. Yeah. Okay, so we have the DevCon2Go17, and at the first screen you see the iOS layout animations where we pull up the layout from the bottom. The same goes everywhere you click on the menus. They pull up from the bottom and gives a nice feel to the application. So when we dig into a session, we get the nice transition from the right and we go back out. So those are some of the features. I put in, this is a card window overlay where it's basically a tool palette that is coming up. We also have, for example, here another card style that is overlaying the entire layout. So these are some of the new styles that are used. And now I want to dig into the app itself. And I'm just going to switch here so we are seeing the same thing. Okay, so we have it here. So the idea is that you can easily navigate through all the different modules. The button menu is meant to separate the app into logical areas of content. So this is the UI part, and there is a button in the developer tools, say unlock this app, and here you get the username and password. Now it's unlocked, and if we take a look into the, first off we have the tables. The idea with the prefix of the table names, first of all, there's very few tables, only the tables that are needed. But the prefix of the tables is, the idea about that is that when we get into the relationship graph, it is very easy to, even with table occurrences that are several tables away, when only using the prefix, it doesn't fill up that much text, so the relationship graph is easy to overview. And we have the path, so we go from, so let's take for example this one, where we go from the interface to session to location. So that's the idea, that we can always follow the path. Let me see, follow here. So we can follow the path. We are starting from interface, going through the session, the location, and then we have a postfix or a surname of the table occurrence for what it is doing. So this one, for example, is used for selecting something. And this is what I mean by a variation of the selector connector model. So when we talk about building the structure first, this is really the tables that are needed. And each table, contacts, location, session, speaker, and vendors are really the main things we are using. I'm also using a face I'm calling interface. Other people tend to call it globals or file global or whatever. The name is not that important. The important thing is that, that you have a table where, as you can see, there's some fields and a single record. But if we dig into one of the tables, like the contacts, I'm using a key primary, and the CUNT is the prefix of the contact table. So in the naming of the primary key, I always know which table it belongs to. And this is a UUID there. I also often use a secondary primary key, which is a serial number. Sometimes it's, for some purposes, you want to know how many, records that is created, and then you can use the serial number. The UUID is something we started using some years ago, and it's especially useful for when you're synchronizing records. So you don't rely on, when you're merging from different sources, you always have a unique key. Other than that, we have 2 constant keys, and they are mainly there in order to make a relationship. Actually, the K is 1 is very often used like you can see here in the relationship between the interface table and the contacts table. And it's just making a Cartesian relation. And you can do that between any fields, basically, because a Cartesian is just relating everything to each other. But if you have K is 1, 1 is 1, it makes sense. So that's more the reason to do it. And as you will see later, there are some things that could be less code, but sometimes it makes sense to put in a code that might be a little longer, but it's easier to understand. Okay, so other than that, we just have the fields, as few as possible, that is really needed for the purpose of this table. So these are the fields that are really needed for the purpose of this contacts table. And finally, we love to have some housekeeping fields that are just like who created this record, who modified, and when and where. And I'll get back to the last one later. Okay, so this was a little bit about the structure. So let me move on to iBeacons. If anyone was attending my session last year, I spoke a lot about iBeacons. So this might be a little shorter and faster, but you can go back and review the session from last year. But iBeacon, and really what is an iBeacon? It's basically just like a lighthouse. It is something that is sending out a signal, like a beep. It is also used, the concept is used for airports, for example. There's airport beacons that sends out a signal in a specific frequency so that the airplanes can be guided to the runway. And an iBeacon is basically the same. It's a low power Bluetooth device that sends out a radio signal every 100 milliseconds or whatever you set it to. And that signal contains at least a UUID, a major and a minor value. So the reason for these three is a part of the standard. And when we see the UUID, we think, oh, that must be unique, but it's really not. The UUID is really the identification of the application. So in DevCon2Go, we actually are using 3 of these UUIDs. One of them is for the beacons that are in the session rooms. Another one is for the beacons that are at the vendor booth. And third, there is a UUID for beacons that speakers are carrying around for the iBeacon games. The major and the minor value is a combination that makes this beacon unique. So for example, in this room we have a beacon that has the same UUID as all the beacons in the session rooms. And then in this room the major might be 1014, and we might have 4 beacons in here. They are all named a major of 1014, so we know that it's this room, but then the minor could be 1, 2, 3, 4. The idea is also that, that you could use this in retail stores. So for example, the supermarket has the major ID, and the minor ID is for each department, for example. There could be extra information included in the radio signal. And that's true for, there's another iBeacon standard, I forgot the name, Eddystone. But that standard is not supported by Apple, and what is in FileMaker Go is what's supported by Apple, the Apple iBeacon standard. And Apple's iBeacon standards is only containing the UUID major and minor. There are several vendors. These are 2 of the most popular. Last year I did a very thorough test of these 2 brands and found that the Contact.io was the most reliable. It also has the benefit over the SD mode that you can exchange the battery when it dies. And for this conference, we are using the Contact.io for most of the beacons. I believe some SD modes are at the vendor booth. So in 16, we got a new script. Last year, in 15, we had to trigger this reading of the iBeacon. So that meant you had to push a button and wait for the iOS to search for beacons and then return a result. This year we got the region monitor script step, which is really great. Basically, we asked the iOS to watch for specific iBeacons. And we do this by, with a single script step saying monitor regions. And as you can see, you can fill out some stuff here. You give it a region name, and you can have up to, I believe it's 50 regions. I can't remember, it's in the documentation. And you give that region a name. So for example, for this one, I gave it a name of iBeacon, which is really a stupid name. But for the conference, I've given every room a region. So this one is Segaro South, right? So that's the name of the region inside this room. So that's the name. And then you want to attach a script to that. Because when the iOS reads a beacon in this region, it triggers a script in FileMaker Go. Finally, we want to know which UUID major and minor is attached to this region. So the UUID is the ones for all the session rooms. The major, as I said, was maybe for this room, it was 1014. And I haven't checked the minor because I don't care if it's 1, 2, 3, or 4. I just want to know that we are in this room. So the iOS is telling FileMaker whenever it detects that you enter a region or exit a region. And there's a little caveat here because we need to have FileMaker Go in the foreground in order for this to work. So let's take a look at the code for this, which is really simple. I jump into the iBeacon functions. So here's the script that is starting the region monitoring. I've tried to put in as much comments as possible, so it should be easy for you to just grab out the code and understand what's going on. But basically, I'm starting here by using a execute SQL call and get all the names of the locations. So basically, all the room names, I get that into a variable of locations. And then I loop through each of these locations, and for each, I set a configure region monitor script. Here we go. And define the name, script, UUID, and major. So for the name, I just have a custom function that picks out each value within the SQL. I tell it to run the script that is the iBeacon region monitor action and set the UUID and major again from that SQL call. That's actually the reason that I'm doing a SQL call is that I need both the room name, the major, and the major from that. And then just run through it. So this is basically all there is to it when we want to start a region monitor. When we want to stop it again, we can actually go in and do select. So here we have the option of doing an iBeacon, geofence, or clear. This is actually the same script step that you can use if you want to use the geofence. So for example, when you arrive somewhere, you can, let's say you're going out to a customer, and you can set this up so that by entering into their geofence around their address, it pulls up all the data that you need for that customer. But it's the same script step that also clears the entire monitor region scripts. Or actually, there is an ability to specify a specific region. So if you want to stop only monitoring a specific region, you can enter the name here. If you leave it clear, then it will just clear all the regions. So when we have an action, so that means the iOS is telling the FileMaker Go that now we enter or exit a region, we run this script. So first off, I am grabbing the with the function saying get region monitor events. That's really what the iOS is telling us. So we get in here a and I forgot to put in the format here, but it says the first line is the name of the region, and the second line is having a timestamp, and then a 1 if we enter the region, and a 0 if we exit the region. So that's why we are setting in here, we are grabbing the second column and in the second value to see if it's a 0 or 1, so we know if we enter. And if we did not enter a region, we just bail out of the script because we're not interested in seeing something that is going on in a room that we just walked out through. If we enter the room, then we have the location name, and we want to look up the location ID. We do that with a SQL call, and then we are setting that into a global field in the interface table, so we establish a relationship to the session table, because we want to see what's going on in this room next. That's the idea. And you find it here within, let me see, just drag it a bit bigger. So we have the monitor. We can click here, and since I'm on the desktop, I get an error message. But we click on the monitor region, and when you enter, it will show the upcoming sessions of the room that you just entered. At least that's the idea. We still have the functionality from last year where you can manually trigger that function. Okay, so that was the iBeacon part. I'm just going to run really quick through some of these features that are also there, but for tracking or exchanging your contact information with people you meet, we have the feature of creating a QR code, and then you can just scan the other person's QR code, and then you have exchanged your contact information. We're using a module from Barcode Creator that creates this QR code with your information. There's also another feature where you can create a vCal file with everything you have selected on My Schedule. And this feature is creating a file with all the sessions that you have selected and put it into a vCal file, which is a standard format, and it exports that file so that you can import it into your calendar. And as right at the bottom, now it's also possible from FileMaker Go. It wasn't possible last year, so that was a desktop feature only. But this year we got a new function, calculation function, that enables us to create a file in the right encoding so that the calendar will accept it. There's a caveat on the vCal, and if you try to do that, you'll see that that we need to attach that vCal file to an email that you need to send to yourself. The reason is that on the iOS platform, there's the concept of sandboxing, which means that we can't just tap into every other application on the iPad. So for this feature, we need to send it through an email. But you can use this feature for many other things in desktop as well. So the other feature is the vCard file, and that goes directly into your address book. So when you have scanned some new friends, you can get those contact information directly into your address book without having to put it into an email. So one of the new things this year is an in-app update of the application. So the idea is that we have the FileMaker Go file that is installed in your FileMaker Go, and at startup we are asking a web server for a version info. So basically we are asking what is the newest version of this app. If it's newer than what's already on your iPad, then we want to do an update. Or at least give you a choice of doing an update. If you choose to do an update, then there's a small utility file that gets exported, and the reason for that is that we need to close the DevCon2Go file in order to override it. Otherwise, we would just have a DevCon2Go DevCon2Go or DevCon2Go 3 and 4, and that doesn't work well. So we export the updater file, runs a script in the updater file that closes the DevCon2Go and downloads the new DevCon2Go file from a web server. Now bear in mind that this concept is, first of all, it's actually very simple and powerful, but we download it from a web server because of the many attendees here and other people that might want to download and update. The other reason that we can use a web server is that there's nothing secret here. So all the information is public, the app itself is completely public and open source, so we don't have to worry about security. But you can use the same model and steal it from here, where you just download it from a container field on a hosted FileMaker file, and then apply authentication within that FileMaker environment. So another part of the updating thing is data updates, and you've probably seen that there has been a handful of data updates, and that is, for example, if a session needs to be changed or we have to put in some changes to the iBeacon, majors and minors, and stuff like that. So the data updates this year is via JSON and CURL. Well, CURL, it's insert from URL script step. We are not really using the CURL options, but the reason is that we are downloading a file instead of connecting directly to a server. But the concept is, again, we have the DevCon2Go file. We ask a web server, because it can handle high traffic, for a new version. It's a simple text file that sits on the web server. We are just getting that, the content of that file, and within that file there's 2 lines with version info, one for the app itself and another one for the data. And if that data file, version file says that it has an update, then we are asking a web server to download the JSON object and update the app. The JSON object is basically just a text file where the content is the new data that we want to put into DevCon2Go, and it is formatted as a JSON object, so that we can use the new parsing functions for parsing into DevCon2Go. And we could have used the data REST API, and we wanted to, but it was due to legal stuff that we were not able to put it in place here. And that's where, if you're doing this to a REST API, then you'll need the curl options part. But the concept is the same. So let's dig into this. So we have the scripts here. There's the new update function. So first off, we have the check for new data and app updates. So basically, we are just going in here and go to a layout that says update check. The reason is that we don't want you to do anything while we are checking this stuff. So here is just a very simple insert from URL step. We are going into a target, and the new step, the new feature here with insert into a variable saves us from having another field in the solution that is only used for grabbing something via the insert from URL. So we put it into a variable, and the URL is coming from a field in the interface table. So nothing more to it. We are basically just grabbing the content of that URL that points to a file sitting on a web server. We're grabbing that in, and then there's some error checking, but we get the app version, and we grab the data version, and then we are basically just looking at If there is the app update, then we want to ask you if you want to perform this data update and go from there. If there is a data update, then we go on and perform the data update. And if there's no data available, then if you trigger this function yourself, then we are telling you that, well, there's no data updates available. So you could try later. So this is really, really simple. Now let's say we want to perform the data update. And let's just, oh, sorry, I wanted to debug this. So let's say we have a data update. So first off, we are doing, sorry. This was the app update I wanted to do. There, yeah, okay. So the first thing we do is that we are doing some safety things here, because you might have already put some sessions into your schedule. You might already have taken some session notes, and you might already have met some people that you have the contact information from. So the first thing we want to do is to save that data. So first off, we are taking the my schedule, the list of the sessions that you have put on my schedule, put that into a file and save it into the temporary directory. The same goes for the session notes. We are grabbing, if you have any session notes, grabbing that into a text file, placing that into the temporary folder. And third off, the same concept for all your contacts. We are grabbing that, putting into a file, and place it into the temporary directory. Now we have done that, and now it's safe to replace the file itself. So what we are doing here is that we are setting this one, let me see, there. We are setting a file path, and as you can see, this is the path to the temporary directory. And it is taking a file that you don't see unless you dig into the application, and this one is getting exported into this temporary directory. So what is going on now is that if we just go to this, folder, as you can see, we have the update app file. This is a very small utility file that has one layout. This is just a GIF animation that runs into a web viewer, which you actually don't see when you do the update, but that is due to that I don't do any refresh window here. So first off, we are setting a variable, and this is a global variable of the DevCon2Go17. It is placing it into the documents path and then using the name of the file itself. The reason for that is the new ability to specify external data sources as a global variable instead of having it hard-coded. So first off, we are doing that, and now we can close the DevCon2Go17 file. After we have done that, we are going to insert from URL into a container field. There's a single field in this file, which is a container field, and we want to grab the file into that container field from the web server. And this is what's going on in this step. After we have it into the container field, we want to export it out to our documents folder. And since the new file and the old file has the same name, the old file gets overwritten. So that's what's going on here. And now we can open the file because we have the reference to the file in the Documents folder. And after that, we are performing the scripts that finish up the updates of the application itself, which is importing all the user data that we just placed in the temporary directory. So that you arrive on a new version of the app, but still with your data in the app. So this was the app application in-app updates. For the data updates, basically the same thing is happening where we insert from URL into a global variable. I'm using a global variable here because it's being used in multiple scripts, subscripts. So we are placing the content of the JSON object that sits in the text file on the web server for the data update. We place that into a global variable. And then we have some error checking. Now, in order to make this update a little bit smart, it is coded so it's transactional, which means that now we are opening a record and we are not committing anything until we are finished passing out all the data. This makes the updating much faster, and if there is an error, then we can roll back the entire thing at the end. So what's going on here is we are opening the records and performing subscripts for location, the speaker, the vendor, and the sessions. And what's going on in here is, for example, for the location, is that we have the objects, then we pick out the elements and basically take the information about the first location, and then we pass it out into variables so it's easier to see and debug, and then we are just going through setting a relationship to that record. If it does exist, then we are updating. If it doesn't exist, then we are creating a new record on via the relationship. And then if you look down here, the reason for all the if statements is that if there's nothing new to change in the field, then we shouldn't try to set something in the field. This also optimizes the performance of the updates. And when we have gone through all the location, we are moving on and finally go to, we are going to finish up by committing the records, or if something goes wrong, then we have the ability to revert. After we have done that, we are handling deletes. In the data object, we also get down if there are some records that needed to be deleted. So that's really the update feature here. It might sound complex, but hopefully it's fairly easy to understand with all the comments in the scripts here. Okay, are you still awake? Okay. You're so silent. Okay, good. That leaves us with not much more than there's some links here to the brain baskets where you can get the convention stuff and other goodie stuff. The Contact.io Estimotes are the vendors of the iBeacons, and Geist Interactive is the creator of the barcode creator. You can get that from the download as well. But other than that, I think it's time for questions.
If you have questions,
if you have
microphone.
Yeah. Oh, he's coming with. up here in the front.
I was just wondering how we can get to the unlocked version of the app.
That's very easy. Let me just close it and show you. So you open the DevCon2Go, and then when you do it on, when you open it, you go to Developer Tools and Unlock. That button is available when you open on a desktop. You're welcome. Other questions? Yeah?
What happens if it doesn't download a full data update, if your connection gets dropped or something like that?
Well, then, good question. As it is a JSON object, we either get a full object or we have an invalid object. So that's basically the reason, and it's very easy with the new JSON function, parsing functions, because if the JSON is not valid, it will return that it's not valid. So, yeah.
I updated my app just a couple hours ago, but before, when I was walking around, I'd be scrolling, and then it would become non-responsive. Did that get fixed in the update?
No. No. I would love to say that I made a mistake and messed something up, but what you are referring to is actually a FileMaker Go bug that the engineering team was able to reproduce at the veg yesterday, and I know they are currently working on that. So hopefully soon there will be a vref out that fixes that.
So I'm interested in knowing, if I'm running it on desktop, I have to, go to the More menu and, click Close, and I'd like to be able to just go to the window and just close it. Is there some real good reason why it was done that way? I mean, I'm sure you have to do that on mobile, but how about for desktop?
Oh, could you stand up? Where are you?
Oh, right here.
Oh, there. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I got completely confused. Could you repeat the?
Yeah. So I've been running it on desktop.
Yeah.
And I have to go to the the More button and then click Close File. I'd like to be able to just go and just click the Close window, to it on desktop, and it didn't seem to do that. Some special reason?
It's working here.
Okay.
So no particular reason.
Okay.
Is that on Windows or Macintosh?
Mac.
It's on Mac.
Yeah.
So now I have it here and I can close it.
Okay. Well, then I'll have to try it again.
So maybe if you have a card window open, you need to close that. I'm not sure, actually. Yeah.
I noticed that behavior as well. And what I did on the Mac, Control Option S to see the status area, and there was a script running, and it wanted to continue.
Ah.
And then when I hit continue, I was not only able to close the window, but also quit the application. So there was script going.
Okay, so that's the reason. I don't know why that is happening or where it is, but it's obviously a bug you discovered. So if you can fix that, please let me know. Okay. Other questions?
First of all, I want to say this is really well done, nicely done. However, if I look at the tracks, they're in colors, and then if I look at the list view, they're coded with letters and colors. But there's one track that doesn't seem to be defined. It's a yellow C. And what does C mean? Cool, or what? What does that mean?
Core, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Huh? Closing inside. Thank you.
Okay.
So that's what it means.
I have a closing insight.
Yeah, great. Yes.
No, it's an intermediate insight because you've still got 10 minutes left.
Okay.
And maybe somebody asked this before and I was distracted, but I noticed when I was in the room here and I was trying to identify my location, it kept giving me completely random stuff from other rooms and other places. and I was curious if anybody else had that experience or if there's something going on. How many people didn't think they were in Gran Saguaro South? Yeah. By the way, it's Saguaro. We don't pronounce
Saguaro.
Saguaro, yeah.
Saguaro.
It's a Spanish thing.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was curious if there's some explanation. Like, do you know where the beacons are in this room and why?
Down there, behind you.
Wow. So I should have picked it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I can say is that the region monitoring script step is great because it's reading by itself. The downside is that it's sensitive, and it's sensitive in a way that is difficult to understand. You need to understand that the iBeacon is a radio signal, and a radio signal can be blocked by a lot of things like people or walls or particular metal objects. So that's also why the beacons are way up here, so people don't block for the radio signal, and that's done in order to get a better reading. If you're using the locate functionality where you press a button and it reads, the downside is that you have to wait for it to read, but the upside is that what gets returned from the iOS is a list of all the beacons it can see. But as you can dig into the codes, but the result that we get is getting sorted by which beacon is strongest. So I basically just say, okay, we got 10 beacons here, but which one is strongest signal? The one with the strongest signal must be the one that you're closest to. And then you get a better reading of that.
Yeah, so in this case, it seems like it's not, I mean, you'd think that would be the closest one back there, but it's not coming up. Sometimes it's not picking up anything at all, which is weird. Even when we keep re-hitting it, we're both having that same situation, so I don't know what the deal is. I would assume that an environment, because I've got a client where I'm going to be using this like in a machine shop kind of thing, I'm assuming an environment where you have, you know, things that are 10 feet apart from each other and you're looking for very, very close location, you're going to probably have better luck because you're not worrying about 20 different signals hitting you at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Hello. With the new feature about the external source with variable, why do you use still the same file name for update app? You can't use a different name for every session.
A different name for every session?
For the file update app.
The data update file?
Yes, because I think if I try to update the app 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 a lot of time, the procedure, so the script update, perform app update, app version, export the field content in the variable file path. And the variable is still the same because it's get temporary path and update app.fmp12. Is correct? I'm talking about the script update, perform app update.
So we are talking about the...
Yes, the script.
Yeah. So we are talking about the script where...
Yes, perform app update, row...
Update. And this one?
No, the perform app update, app version, row 80.
App version?
App version, yes.
Yeah?
Row 80.
Am I on the right track, or?
Yes, the script is right, the row is 80. 80. 80. Line 80. Okay, exactly. You can use a different name for the file for every update procedure.
Yeah, but this one is only the helper file.
Yes, I know, but I'm joking around. But when I when I try to update with the file open, because I've opened the file, the procedure the procedures make an error because it can't overwrite the file opened.
Exactly. So, but that's what's going on in the update app file.
I mean, number version or casual number or everywhere you can think. You can name the file like 12345 update app.fmp12.
Yeah, but then we would have DevCon2Go17 multiply times, right?
The DevCon2Go17, the name is still the same, but it changed the name of the update app file.
Okay.
Only the update app file.
Okay.
So you can use a global variable to external resource, right? With the 16.
Yeah. But I don't know what is your question in this? Sorry. I know
it's only a particular, but if isn't better to change the name to the update file for every update?
I think it's easier this way. It's more simple this way.
Okay.
And it should work.
D'accord.
Okay. Other questions or? No? No. Thank you.